Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around I'm playing as the High Elves against the Dark Elves led by Lord Jimmy on the map, the Iron Sand Desert. And running a very wide elf build here, so let's kind of see how it breaks down and goes down in actual practice, I suppose. So right off the bat, as I mentioned initially, this is a very wide elf build. Rather than going for any sort of fancy footwork with small blobs of terror-causing units or monsters or that sort of stuff, I went very wide. And my lord is definitely not very combat capable. I brought Teclis. His combat stats are pretty atrocious across the board. Melee attack and melee defense is not the worst, I don't think, compared to some of the casters in, for example, Warhammer 1. But like Gorst. But that's not something to be proud of. He has a pretty atrocious charge bonus. This is despite being on a horse. Atrocious armor at 50. He does have slight built-in missile resistance, but nothing too fancy as far as combat goes. Now, what he does have, though, I did bring him Sword of Teclis, which provides him with an insane melee stat boost. Though this looks very good on paper, in practice, this is not that impressive. It basically brings him up to this offensive stats of a regular non-combat or a regular combat lord, essentially. Maybe a little tiny bit better, but that's about it. I also brought the Scroll of Hoeth, which reduces enemy power recharge rate, which could be useful. Dark Elves do usually bring quite a decent amount of magic. I also brought King's Ring of Fury, which could allow me to get a cast of a wind spell that could potentially do a lot of damage. Of course, the Potion of Charoi, which gives me 44% damage resistance, as well as a significant heal. And it's on a fairly low cooldown, so that's definitely very useful, though it does hurt my ability to recharge times. I also brought only 3 spells. I did bring Net of Mintok, Flock of Doom, and Regrowth. I figured these would be the most useful spells. Flock of Doom to counter lightly armored elf infantry, Net of Mintok just to freeze enemies in place and shoot them down because I do have a lot of shooting, and then Regrowth just to heal units up. Heal spells are always good. Of course, I do have a Greater Arcane Conduit. I do have Shield of Sapphire, which is a map-wide damage resistance when I'm casting, and the Wild Heart, which improves my power reserves and power recharge rate when I'm casting. One of the cool things, I guess, I could have done was more fire-oriented with Flaming Sword of Ruin and then keeping Kindle Flame, but as I was not really thinking I was going to do that, I didn't bring, or as I didn't bring Flaming Sword of Ruin, I didn't bring Kindle Flame. Now, for my front line, it is very wide. I have 6 units of spearmen, and there's 4 of them up in the front and 2 in the back, ready to kind of flex and adjust as needed. Out on the flanks, I do have 2 units of Phoenix Guard, kind of anchoring the sides, and I have 2 units of White Lines of Crace here in the center, ready to flex forward and shut down any enemy infantry that I have to, any heavy infantry, which, of course, Dark Elves do have a decent selection of high-end infantry. 6 units of archers in the back, and these are the basic low-armor archers. Will give me a very strong range contingent, and although these guys aren't the best at defending themselves, they can definitely, for a very low cost, put down some nasty amounts of hurt on enemy units. They'll destroy shades, they'll destroy unshielded dark shards or light cavalry or that sort of stuff, and even the shielded elf infantry will die pretty quickly to it. Now for my opponent, he went with a very, I think it's an unconventional build. I might be wrong, but it's not a build I've seen before. A front line that is also very wide. This surprised me a bit. You don't always see such wide front lines, consisting of 4 units of dread, or actually 5 units of dread spears, with 2 units of Black Ark Corsairs mixed into the center here. It does look like my opponent was floating just a tiny bit of resources, so he veteraned up his Black Ark Corsairs, which is kind of funny because I had just enough to veteran up 1 unit of White Lines of Crace. 2 units of Shades in the back to provide some decent range contingent that I can't spot immediately. A unit of Dark Riders Shields to flex around, and then a very hefty cavalry contingent. 2 units of Cold War Knights out here on the flank. Actually, these guys are veteraned up as well, so I guess he had quite a bit more points than that left over. So 2 units of Cold War Knights out here on the flank, and then 2 Cold One Chariots, and Malekith, interestingly enough, on a Cold One Chariot as well. Now, Cold One Chariots, I'm not one of the problems with the Dark Elf Cold Ones is that they have the Primal Instinct effect, so they do tend to rout off or run off and do their own thing. But they definitely have decent combat stats. These guys definitely have respectable armor, very high weapon strength, bonuses against infantry, that sort of stuff. Over here you can see, unfortunately, 1 volley does get wasted on Malekith, which is not really necessary. You can see some ranged fire is kind of peppering in against my Phoenix Guard and my Spearmen. I'm not too concerned about that. they can tank through it fairly effectively. And you can see I simply focused on these Black Arc Corsairs who are getting a little ahead of themselves and getting to the front. Now, I do have a lot of anti-large on the flanks, so I'm able to flex my Phoenix Guard around. Shortly, I'm going to be able to move my Spearmen around as well. And my opponent can't really risk just charging into the Blob with Phoenix Guard. That would be completely suicidal. You can see these poor Black Arc Corsairs are basically routed off before ever making contact, knocked down to about a third of their HP, actually less, probably about a quarter, and routed off. These Spears and Phoenix Guard are taking a few losses here and there, but that's okay. In the meantime, I'm going to counter the Shades. The Shades are very squishy. They have very low armor. They don't have physical resistance in the way the Skaven skirmishers do, so they will go down very quickly. You can see they're not taking too many model losses. In the meantime, poor Teclis has been getting peppered down, and this is a huge mistake on my part. I should have been aware that the Shades were focusing Teclis and moved him, and instead I was so focused on my other micro that I didn't notice that Teclis is almost dead. I do pop the Potion of Troy just to give him some damage resistance and now run away, but now I have to keep moving because Cold One Chariots are coming in. Now Malekith and the Cold Ones have been intercepted by the Spears, and I'm collapsing on them with the Phoenix Guard. In the meantime, over here, I was focused on casting Net of Mintok on these Cold One Knights, who are now getting caught by the Phoenix Guard. Once they drop below 50%, they will start rampaging, and that means the Phoenix Guard will be able to pick them apart with absolute ease. In the meantime, these Spears are trying to flex in, shut down these Dark Riders, shut down these Cold One Chariot, and prevent them from causing further damage in my backline. And the Rampage is a huge problem, I think, for Cavalry, because once Cavalry gets bogged down, if they get bogged down like this, they will get absolutely massacred. And you obviously shock Cav, you want to be cycling in and out, not getting bogged down. This Cold One Chariot over here has gotten surrounded and is getting mauled horribly, and once again, that Primal Instinct kicks in and is getting absolutely annihilated. I do pop the Windspill over here, and you can see it actually does quite a bit of damage to these guys. Teclis, though, definitely in a bit of a rough spot, suffering quite a bit of damage. You can see some of my archers here shooting down these Shades, just trying to whittle them down. In the meantime, I'm definitely losing some units to routes. These archers are running off. My opponent is doing a fairly good job at trying to just force into my back line. You can see the Phoenix Guard, though, is just absolutely holding their own. The Spearmen are doing okay, and my front line is doing just fine, though just now my opponent's murderous prowess has kicked in, and that definitely could be a problem. I've lost track of Teclis. Actually, he's right here. I'm trying to use him to pursue these chariots off the field. My Phoenix Guard is coming back. You can see, unfortunately, these archers actually shattered despite being at 34 models, which is definitely kind of unfortunate. Malekith over here is slugging out with spears. This is not an ideal situation for him. Elven spears have very high melee defense as long as their martial mastery is up, and you can see it because I was casting a spell there. I casted Regrowth on one of these units, the White Lines of Craze. Because of that, these guys were getting that sweet physical resistance. Meantime, Teclis does charge in. I'm trying to bog down Malekith, surround him, and beat him up. He has popped Power of Darkness, just trying to sustain himself, or sort of give himself some Winds of Magic so he can get out. And you can see I'm just trying to swarm him, time him down, and kill him. These Cold One Chariots, because they do come back and they are rampaging, charge in to Phoenix Guard, and you can kind of predict how that's going to go. These Cold One Knights, though, are still kind of running amok, and now that the situation is definitely broken down, I'm having some issues trying to shut my opponent down. Teclis, I do pop sort of Teclis. I'm just trying to charge into these Shades. I'm just trying to shut him down so that they stop harassing Teclis. This was a major mistake. I should have simply run away. Teclis is pretty quick on his horse. He has, well, actually, he's not that quick. I thought he has the same speed as I actually thought he had the same speed as Tyrion, but he does not. So you can see over here he wavers and then he breaks, despite the fact that I do get a Net of Mintok on these Cold One Knights, allowing me to keep him alive just a little bit longer. In the meantime, these Dread Spears are getting surrounded and slaughtered. Unfortunately, Phoenix Guard does not have... Well, so actually, Phoenix Guard does have decent melee stats, so they will actually tear through these guys pretty effectively. And you can see my opponent's infantry line is just completely collapsing, so now he's not really going to have any sort of anvil. Unfortunately, my archery contingent, by and large, completely fell apart. I'm now trying to pick up these Dread Spears, make sure they don't come back. But honestly, at this point, my opponent has a pretty healthy cavalry contingent. He has these Cold One Knights, who are actually... they're not that quick, but with the Dark Riders helping catch Teclis, I'm in deep trouble. Malekith is still rampaging around, so my opponent has a very, very healthy cavalry contingent, although his range contingent is absolute garbage right now. So I'm trying to kind of regroup my infantry, regroup my whatever archers I can scrape together, and prepare to meet my opponent's remaining troops. I definitely need to rely on my archery contingent here to dish out some major hurt, because if they don't, I'm not really going to be able to force this cavalry to fight me. Now, I still have a very healthy infantry contingent, so despite the fact that the balance of power, I'm not entirely sure why it's this far in my opponent's favor. I've got a lot of anti-large units here. My opponent has very little in the way of infantry units, and at this point, I'm able to really keep control of all my flanks, because my opponent has lost so many units for flanking, or for applying frontal pressure. Now, Malekith does charge in here. He does dive in. You can see he actually racks up a decent amount of kills against the spears. But he does take a little bit of return damage. You can see in the meantime these archers are tearing through these Shades. I'm kind of trying to realign my infantry here, and these shades will shortly, I do believe, start routing, and then these do believe should shatter. They're incredibly low on HP. Something I've definitely noticed with Warhammer 2 is that model losses are not. You don't lose models as quickly, usually, unless it's a very high damage unit, or very high alpha unit. You usually don't lose models. Over here you can see another chill wind goes down, hits my archers, definitely causes some nasty damage there. But I still have a healthy amount of models here, 43 and 35. You can see these guys are very low on HP, and despite that, they have a very hefty amount of models, so definitely be crazy. Meantime, these spears are committing. My opponent is definitely trying to kind of do a last gasp effort here, so with his infantry and hoping to get into my backline. So I'm just trying to flex all my units to cover all my flanks. Trying to get the white lines of Cracer, but really my only anti-infantry unit here to get in against these spears, tear through them, and in the meantime counteract these Cold One Knights with Phoenix Guard. Now at this point, most of my archers are definitely running a bit low on ammo, so as long as I can just keep alive a handful of these guys who have some ammo left, I basically will be okay. Fortunately, I make a mistake here with the archers, and I push them out this way when I should have moved them towards the spears, and so these Cold One Knights actually get into the chicken coop and start messing up these archers. I do flex these spears, pull these spears away from this fight though, because my white lines can mop this up easily. And I start trying to pincer these guys with the Phoenix Guard, start peppering them down with archers. You can see these shades actually recovered, surprisingly, despite only being on 12 models. And you can see these Cold One Knights are just going down. About half of them are trapped. And my opponent is going to be in very, very deep trouble here, because as soon as Primal Instincts kicks in, which will happen pretty shortly, these guys are actually going to start rampaging, and they are going to come back into the fight. And that is definitely not ideal for my opponent. That means I'm going to be able to just pick apart his troops. You can see Primal Instinct kicks in there, and all these guys who are far away. Normally, if you had a cavalry contingent, and let's say none of these guys could get clear, it wouldn't really necessarily matter. Your other cavalry units would get away, and you'd have a very weak cavalry unit, but it would still be a functional cavalry unit. This way, my opponent is going to lose an entire cavalry unit. Malekith is bogged down in the middle of his Phoenix Guard. Phoenix Guard are still healthy. They're above 50%, so Martial Mastery is up. You can see these poor Cold One Knights are getting absolutely slaughtered. This is total charnel house. Now, these Dark Riders do get into my archers. You can see they're pretty badly beat up because they did charge into spears at one point earlier in the game, but they simply rat off those archers instantly. And you can see Malekith just plows through these spearmen, and I do believe fear outs them. Yep, there we go. And I'm trying to pick apart these Dark Riders with archers. Unfortunately, these archers over here are routed off to a very inconvenient position, but they just have a decent amount of ammo. So if I can pick apart these Dark Riders, if I can apply some pressure to them, and just break this unit, I'm in a pretty healthy position at this point. You see these Cold One Knights actually recover. They're definitely, once Primal Instinct kicks in, it's a very rough spot for them. You see these spears simply rout off, as do these Dark Riders. They're not having any more of this. They charge into those archers, and they just can't take it anymore. Now Malekith is surrounded, and he is getting absolutely slaughtered, and that is game. So we're going to throw things in fast forward, and there we go, Pyrrhic Victory. Now the Pyrrhic Victory thing, I think, that was a little confusing. I did lose my Lord. Teclis did get caught out on the flank by the Dark Riders and the Dread Knights, but my losses were not that severe. I lost about half of my army, whereas my opponent lost about 7/8 of his army. So definitely definitely about a little over 80%, somewhere around 85% probably of his army. So definitely, it was not that bad of a fight for me. I was a little surprised by the Pyrrhic Victory thing. I assume it's because I lost Teclis. I definitely made some huge mistakes, and I think there's no way I can understand. There's no way I can really emphasize this enough. I made huge mistakes with my use of Teclis. I'm a bit used to playing Tyrion or with a Dragon Prince or Princess, with a Prince or Princess mounted on a dragon. Teclis is very squishy, and I was very aggressive with him, which was very stupid of me, and that meant that I lost him very badly. So it was basically just to those shades. If I'd been smart, I could have pulled him back and just been fine. Now for my army, the stats were pretty well rounded. The spears didn't perform that great, but then again, neither did the enemy spears. They were mostly there just to hold and stall, while the archers and the heavier infantry did most of the work. The white lines of Crace did some absolutely champion work against the infantry. Obviously, the Black Heart Corsairs were completely broken by the time they reached the line, so the only fighting they did really was against the Dread Spears, and the Dread Spears are easily slaughtered by white lines of Crace. So on the Phoenix Guard, you can see these guys actually veteran up a lot, so definitely don't underestimated it just because these guys have a low kill count. It was most likely against Cold One Chariots and Cold One Knights, and obviously there you're not, and Malekith. And these guys that did some pretty crazy work too. The Phoenix Guard over here, also great work. You can see these guys had very low model loss. They had very low model. My opponent definitely did a decent job of focusing units out, especially my ranged contingent, but I still had a fair amount of pretty healthy, or model count wise, healthy units. And the archers did some pretty good work too. You can see their kill counts were running easily into decent numbers. My opponent Got very good work out of Malekith. I was surprised. The chariot definitely seems to perform very well, and I think because it's a bit of a smaller target for the archers, it's um, I think in some ways it's actually a better mount than the dragon, especially because Malekith doesn't rampage. Um, the Cold One chariots, while the Cold One chariots and the Cold One knights definitely and the Dark Ridge definitely applied back pressure, they weren't really able to break my back line because I just had so much infantry on the field. Obviously, high elves have pretty good morale, so they usually come back. So you definitely need to kind of pressure them constantly to fall back. And I definitely had the advantage of all this range fire to pressure my opponent's troops if they tried to pull back. The Dread Spear simply were not able to win or even hold the front line that effectively against the mix of Spearmen and the White Lines. The White Lines definitely kind of trashed them. And I think that was definitely my opponent's heavy reliance on large, and the fact that I brought a lot of anti-large, I think definitely hurt him quite a bit. Honestly, I think against high elves, large is not the best of options, and a lot because Phoenix Guard is a unit you'll almost always see because they're very good. And Phoenix Guard is an absolutely monstrous unit against basically any large. The only unit I could see them struggling against is the Mammoth once we get across with one. But other than the Mammoth, I can't really think of any large unit that would give the Phoenix Guard a run for their money in a straight up fight. But definitely a good game to my opponent. Definitely applied some nasty pressure there, and with loss of Teclis, I was definitely a little worried things could go south. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any requests, any questions, anything like that, be sure to post those down in the comments, and I will respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye for now.